When a little girl from New Orleans had big dreams for her future, she had to figure out ways around obstacles.
There were money constraints, racial boundaries, and figuring out a path so her talents could be noticed. But in the late 60s, she could have never imagined that today she'd be one of the global leaders now working on a pandemic. Meg Ferris has her story.
You may think it's a long leap with long odds from Lafayette Elementary Public School in the Carrollton area to helping stop a global pandemic alongside Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates. But it's one Dr. Tony Hoover not only made, but she stuck her landing.
I wanted to be part of an organization that could dream so big and be so bold and take risks that where others don't take those risks, and think long term.
Her story's one about how she defied those odds and broke many barriers along the way. It began when an older cousin who went from St. Aug to Harvard said he thought the Ivy League was for her too.
And that's when I was in 6th grade. And my mother overheard the conversation and she started to do some research on where did Harvard recruit out of New Orleans, and it was Isidore Newman and St. Augustine.
She took the entrance exam for Newman. In the early 70s, there were no African-American girls in the private uptown school.
I remember her asking my father if she could get the money for the exam, and I got in.
The family could not afford the tuition, but Dr. Hoover played the clarinet and earned a band scholarship from 7th grade all the way through her senior year. She and a classmate became the first black young women to graduate from Newman. After going to Harvard and earning an undergraduate, master's, and PhD, the pharmaceutical industry began calling.
I first started working on a treatment for the signs and symptoms for Alzheimer's disease that became the first treatment for the signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's disease in the early 90s.
Later at Pfizer, she led the development of Lyrica, the first treatment for fibromyalgia. It's also for epilepsy and neuropathic pain from diabetes complications.
It is truly a remarkable story about the level of efficacy that product has. I mean, we developed it as if it were 3 different products being developed at the same time. So it was quite a historic drug development process.
Then, in 2012, she got a phone call from a former colleague who had just become president of global health at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. She didn't think he was calling to offer her a job.
Then he just popped this question, would you like to come and work for us? I was really shocked. And I said, well, I might consider it once I retire. And he said, well, why don't you think about retiring now?
Now in Seattle, she's the Director of Strategy, Planning, and Management for Global Health at the Gates Foundation. She helps the disease area teams develop and execute strategies on global health, whether it's a new drug, vaccines, affordable test kits, access to medical equipment. There's been Ebola, Zika, and of course, the coronavirus.
We're working around the clock now, as you can well imagine, on COVID-19 solutions.
Dr. Hoover says her values were inspired by her father, an assistant principal at Carver High School and a United Methodist minister. He taught her to give back. Because of that, she spends countless hours mentoring young women starting their careers. She believes developing medications in her pharmaceutical industry days are helping millions, and so is her work today.
This opportunity to work for Bill and Melinda at the Gates Foundation is really monumental. When you think about an organization that can work with its partners around the world and be so bold as to think about eradicating diseases like polio, that's bold, and my father had polio.
Along her journey, Dr. Hoover suddenly lost her husband, an anesthesiologist. He was only 42 when he had a massive heart attack. She has since found love again with a former commander in the Detroit police force.
I met him at Neiman Marcus, and I like to say, you can find anything at Neiman Marcus, even a man.
And you could say Newman realizes the investment they made in that preteen decades ago paid off. The 1977 graduate became a Wall Street Journal Woman to Watch, as well as the Newman Alumna of the Year. Still, never forgetting the other first black students at Newman.
I stand on the shoulders of a lot of people. I think about Leo Jones, David Sylvester, and I think about all of those young black girls who did something for the first time, and I gained strength from them.
But she is focused on the future needs at hand.
We have a pandemic that results in, it's a respiratory disease, which results in people dying because they can't breathe. We have a racial justice movement that started with a man who was murdered, and he said, "I can't breathe."
Now that young girl who walked into the unfamiliar as a junior high student does it again, this time on a global scale, to find healing medications and protective vaccines for all.
And the speed at which new information is coming out and new research is just remarkable. I've never seen anything like this before.
Meg Farris, Eyewitness News.
One of Dr. Hoover's many projects is developing a coronavirus at-home test kit that is affordable to all countries around the world.